is the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. I'm Councilmember Weezer. I've been joined by Marquise Harris-Dawson and Councilmember Felipe Fuentes. We will now go through our agenda items. Item number 8 is our first item. If you could read that into the record, please.
Sure. Councilman, item 8 is the Director of Planning's weekly report.
Welcome. Do we have any report?
Brief report. Mike LeGrand for the record. Today marked one of our bi-weekly meetings we have with the Professional Volunteers Program, which I'd like to talk a moment about, which is made up of members from the American Institute of Architects that come and help staff go through projects with them, give us tips on urban design and other issues to help us not only be more informed, but create a more productive built environment when these projects come through the council and the commission process. We've also released, which I've handed out, a copy of our newsletter for summer 2015 called Planning. It talks a lot about the mobility plan that was recently adopted by the City Council, and we're looking forward to working on that with the council members and making some modifications and moving that through. And I'll be here for your meeting and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. You see the mobility plan is highlighted here, the adoption of the mobility plan and now its implementation. Thank you. Public comment, we have Herman and Wayne. 1 minute, please. Herman and Wayne, 1 minute. This is item number 8.
Item number 8, Director of Planning oral status report relative to ongoing development of city planning policies, work programs, operations, and other items of interest. So what it means is that you have no real plan for development of the city, for the people, and for animals, chipmunks, and other people. And also, we want to know what Mitchell Englander has to say about this on item number 8, because he's not here today. So I'll have to speak for Mitchell Englander on his behalf when he's interested in running for the Board of Supervisors. That's where I just came from. And they're going to build 2 brand new jails, and none of them are going to be in LA City. Ha, 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 ha. No jobs for you, Englander.
Good afternoon. Yes, the meeting at the county board was excellent, hearing all the new plan to build more prisons. But in this work order here on item number 8, it's talking about the Director of Planning oral status report relative to the ongoing development of city planning policies, work programs, operations, and other items of interest. But it does not show if there was a community impact statement here, nor regard to the fact that, really what work order is this? I mean, I don't see nothing new as far as programs. The operations of the city are a fiasco. I should use the word hilarious, because again, with so many people without housing, and this is what the situation of the Planning and Land Use Management Committee is all about. I find that you get a grade F, as in failed.
Item number 2, that was on consent. We have 2 speaker cards. We'll just read that item into the record and then hear from the 2 speakers.
Sure. Item 2, Councilman, is a motion by Councilman Wesson and Price instructing the Planning Department to prepare a building line removal ordinance located on St. Andrew's Place in CD10.
Okay. Herman?
Well, Herb Wesson again, regarding the west side of St. Andrew's Place between Wilshire Boulevard and 6th Street, to eliminate white racial discrimination, to ensure the proposal of redevelopment does not discriminate against the homeless and any population of people that wish to live and reside off of St. Andrew's Place between Wilshire Boulevard and 6th Street. Although many of the occupants that live in the area are white, affluent people with a lot of cash, not like some of us from Jose Huizar's area, CD 14, where I used to come from, but now I live throughout the city as a gypsy. Good choice of word, a gypsy. Because one day, one of you Anglo people are going to be a part of my gypsy club, and you'll see how well you can either swim or sink in the big pond of politicians who refuse, like Wesson, to provide adequate redevelopment projects with the discretion of our tax-paying dollars.
Wayne?
CD10, that's where the slave owner, Herb Wesson, gets whatever he wants. The St. James Episcopal Church, campaign donor? Maybe. The developer? Most likely. And we're going to eliminate any constraints to the proposed redevelopment. Well, then you're going to waive all of the constraints for this church to build a school of any size, proportion, no matter what. Why can't you do that for the rest of the people in the city? Starting with CD10, why have building permits? Why have building inspectors when you can just waive any constraints on development? I like that idea. I like the fact the homeless should go down today and start building their houses on Wilshire Boulevard without constraints.
Okay, item number 4, we will continue to the 22nd in committee.
So item 2, Councilman, will adopt that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we'll adopt item number 2 with no objection. So ordered. Item number 4, we will continue to September 22nd per Council District 12. Item 5, we will continue to the 8th of September with no objections. So that leaves us to item number 1, if that could be read into the record, please.
Sure. Councilman, item 1 is a communication from the mayor relative to the appointment of Ms. Dallas Fowler to the police permit review panel.
Welcome. And Dallas Fowler, if you could come up to the microphone, and welcome, and thank you for volunteering your time to serve on this panel. We truly appreciate it. And if you could share with the committee anything you'd like to share with the committee, why you're interested in this panel, and anything about yourself.
Well, greetings, Mr. Chairman and council members. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to share with you my interest in this panel. I grew up here in Los Angeles, and coming from serving on the Commission on the Status of Women for the last 2 years, and I had a great opportunity to work with the mayor and advise his team on policies impacting women and girls. Also had a wonderful opportunity to work with Homeland Security on the issues of human trafficking and working on their Blue campaign. And it gave me an opportunity to get a little bit of insight into the public safety arena. And through my discussions with the mayor, I also shared some of my interest in taking a further step into that arena. And he also knows my background in construction and labor compliance, and he thought that this might be a good opportunity for me, and I agree. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity to serve the city of Los Angeles in this capacity. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? No, seeing none. Well, we'll move to approve this item and move it on to council. And congratulations, and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, council members.
This is in council. What date?
Wednesday, September 9th.
Wednesday, September 9th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'll ask you the clerk, but it's good to hear that from the clerk. Is just still trying to figure out how to turn on the microphone.
Yeah, that's scheduled for Wednesday, September 9th.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. See you then. We'll move that item without objection. Thank you. Now, on items... what does this note say? My note said. Oh, okay. Okay, I want to clarify that on item 4, it is being continued to October the 6th, not September 22nd.
Councilman, sorry to interrupt you, but are there any speaker cards on item 1?
No, they're not. Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, there are. Yes, there are. Sorry about that. Herman.
It's pretty strange how cars can just be removed from a little box in front of you, but yeah, I think it's a great idea that we have Miss Dallas, because I like the Dallas Cowboys, and the name fits the organization. But now, does Miss Fowler have the capacity, or does she lack the support? There was no question or answer here, because it was already proven that she was going to get this appointment the way normally it functions here in the city of Los Angeles. And as brought out here, there is no community impact statement, none submitted. For the record, it's right off the paper. None submitted. So it's obvious. Herb Wesson, it's from his district, obviously supports his little groupie of people the same way Mayor Garcetti does, by appointing people to positions that relatively may not suit the matter of the subject. So get your action together. Do the right thing. Put people who can actually do and perform the communications of this permit review, and no further action.
Yes, you may not be aware of the new decorum rules for the LA Police Commission. You're required to wear a hood now. So I just wanted to make that clear. So we're putting in somebody who has absolutely no idea how a police permit review panel works, but that's okay, because she's got a nice, interesting little name, Ms. Dallas Fowler. And that's perfectly all right, because she's a black woman. And you got to have a black woman on these panels. We just lost a black woman on the regular police commission, and today they reinstalled an Uncle Tom to replace her. So that's okay. You got to keep the racial balance so you make the city look like that they're being fair. But they're not being fair. They just hand out police permits, and they give review to nobody except campaign donors. So she'll sit in her chair like the rest of you guys, and they'll go, aye. Any objections? So ordered. Motion passes.
So this item is approved, and we'll move on to item number 3.
Yes, Councilman. Item 3 is a city attorney ordinance in response to a motion from Councilman Fuentes, Blumenfield, to amend the Munich code to provide a streamlined process for small residential rooftop panels in the city.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. For your consideration today, and it's a little bit of preaching to the choir since it's council members Fuentes' motion, is an ordinance that will amend the Building and Safety Code and essentially creates a streamlined permitting process for rooftop residential solar systems. So if it's a single family or a duplex home, the applicant no longer has to go through the hurdles. They actually all the requirements are posted online. They submit online with an online signature, and the inspections consolidated. And Building and Safety is not here, but they advised me that the system's already up and running, and it's same-day permits. So, and we're passing this pursuant to a state law that says cities pass this ordinance, and it implements to a T what state law mandates. And so we would ask that you move it to council with first, that you determine that it's exempt from CEQA, and 2, that you approve this ordinance.
Recommendations are exempt from CEQA and
Just adoption of the ordinance.
Okay. Okay, so moved by Mr. Fuentes, second by Mr. Harris Dawson. And before we vote on this, just want to, you're from Building and Safety?
City Attorney's Office.
Okay. I wanted to request from this Building and Safety's office if we had, my office had submitted a motion a year ago on streamlining the permits for commercial properties, and we're going to follow up with that to see if we could follow on the heels of this that makes it available for residential properties, which is a great thing to do. So thank you, Mr. Fuentes, for this motion. So thank you. And with that, we will, seeing no objections or questions, so ordered. Thank you. It's moving forthwith from this committee if there's such a thing, because there's a timeline to this, right? Next item. Oh, yes. Councilman.
Well, I know for a fact that I sat in many of these meetings regarding the permitting process, and since the gentleman brought up regarding the ADA compliance, I demand that there be an audit on the standard that you're applying to this rooftop process for small residential solar energy, because many disabled people don't know what solar energy is all about, or what can happen if they're injured, shocked, or lose power. So there needs to be some clarification in all this matter. And then for the record, again, I demand that the Department of Building and Safety do a walkthrough to ensure that the standards of ADA in every aspect of its measurements, its height and width are in its most strict requirements to meet the needs of residential persons under this Assembly Bill 2188 regarding the residential property that Mr. Weezer brought up. Thank you.
Wayne.
Yes, they're making you in Sacramento, they're forcing you to allow residential, that's middle-class people, get their rooftop solar energy going. See, you were holding it up with all of your so-called regulations and permit inspections. Now, before, you had to pay off the building inspector, and then you could get it done within a couple of months. And I agree, you should be able to pay off the building inspector. And I've been urging you to make that part of the city charter to give you the right to pay off the building inspector. And what you give him or her is between that person and the homeowner. But you won't do it. So it took an Oriental, Muratsuchi, it always takes an Asian to fix this city. And now David Rue's going to help fix this city. And in Sacramento, thank God for this Assembly Bill 2188. Excellent.
So that item is approved. Next item.
Next item, Councilman, is item 6. It's an appeal by David Modern on behalf of the Hyperion Avenue Neighborhood Association. He's appealing the approval of a vesting tract map for 8 single-family dwellings under the small lot ordinance in CD 13.
Thank you. So do you have staff on this item, please?
Jose Carlos Romero, the Peer Advisory Agency. I think it will be more pertinent to let the appellant present the arguments, and then we will respond.
Okay. Why don't you give us a brief overview of the procedural history of this case, what brought us to here, and just a basic overview of what the proposal is about?
There was an application for a small lot subdivision in Hyperion in the Silver Lake Community Plan. The advisory agency held a public hearing and took the hearing under advisement to do further consultations with agencies, because the neighborhood stakeholders had some issues in relation to traffic safety, some accidents that took place. They are not happy with the design of the smaller subdivision, and I'm talking about the building design. So after consultation with the particularly Bureau of Engineering and Department of Transportation, I came back and added some conditions resulting from those consultations with these agencies and issued a decision letter. The decision was appealed. It went to the Area Planning Commission, the East Los Angeles Area Planning Commission. The Area Planning Commission reviewed all the information, regulations, arguments against the decision, and the Area Planning Commission sustained the decision at the advisory agency, and now it was appealed. So I will be happy to respond once they present the arguments.
Thank you very much. So what we will do is call the appellant up first, and then the applicant. And the appellant and the applicant each have 5 minutes. All other public speakers have 1 minute. David Modern.
David Modern, 863 Hyperion Avenue. Let the record reflect that I've submitted additional arguments and provided copies for each of the present council members. First off, I'd like to say that a fair argument exists of potentially significant environmental impacts. An EIR must be prepared where there's a substantial evidence that significant effects may occur. The project is inconsistent with a number of relevant residential policies in the community plan. And in addition, according to a motion put forward by Councilman O'Farrell and seconded by Plum Chair Councilman Weezer on March 18th, 2014, can I request your undivided attention while I'm getting my 5 minutes? Can I request your undivided attention while I'm getting my 5 minutes by chance, Councilman, respectfully?
Sure, sir. I'm trying to figure out what your where your files are, so I could pretty much juggle those two things as I listen to you, sir.
Okay.
I'm listening. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anyway, there's a motion forwarded by Councilman O'Farrell and Plum Chair Weezer that says the 800 block of Hyperion Avenue has unique neighborhood character and environmental setting characterized by hillside lots and substandard streets. The appellant has provided substantial evidence of the project's incompatibility with the surrounding community. The project's scale dwarfs adjacent properties and orients upper floor balconies directly into neighbors' windows, further compromising privacy and neighborhood character. One of the bases of the appeal was the project does not comply with the SLS guidelines. Staff's response to the East LA Area Planning Commission was simply that the guidelines are not mandates or regulations. This discretionary nature of guidelines, however, is beside the point. Conformity with the guidelines is an indicator of conformity with the residential policies of the community plan to protect neighborhoods from out-of-scale development. Indeed, one of the programs to implement policies 1-1314 and 1-31 is to establish design guidelines. The city also has citywide residential design guidelines, one of which is to mitigate negative shade, shadow, and privacy impacts. The inconsistency of the proposed project with this guideline is further evidence of inconsistency with the relevant portions of the general plan. The common access driveway is 40% narrower than the minimum identified in the city's private street regulations. Given the particulars of this stretch of Hyperion Avenue, a common access driveway that does not allow simultaneous ingress-egress would be a design feature that substantially increases public safety hazards. Another thing that was not considered are cumulative traffic impacts. SECOR recognizes the potential for an accumulation of small contributions to a problem to create a cumulative effect. Over 2,000 individual homes have been approved in more than 200 smaller developments between 2005 and 2014. A Los Angeles article suggests the bulk of them are in and around Silver Lake and Echo Park. Additionally, we're aware of at least 135 lots in 23 small lot developments within 2 miles of the proposed project. Also aware of the fact that there are 814 multifamily dwelling units in another 11 projects that may be considered related. As noted in the attached correspondence from a consulting traffic engineer with over 50 years experience, this level of development within the general vicinity of the proposed project could have potentially significant cumulative circulation impacts. As noted in the attached geotechnical report from Wilson Geosciences, Inc., there's also a fair argument of potentially significant geologic and geotechnical impacts. The proposed map is not consistent with the general plan. The design or improvement is not consistent with the general plan. And the applicant's arguments regarding that consistency are misleading and without evidentiary support. The site is simply not physically suitable for the proposed density because of public safety and neighborhood character reasons. The appropriateness of the site-specific density is also a function of the circulation system and the character of the neighborhood. The substandard nature of the 800 block of Hyperion Avenue has been demonstrated. The density of the development is also inconsistent with neighborhood character and adjacent properties. Through various motions put forward by members of the City Council over the last 2 years, there's a recognition of an inherent tension between the small lot ordinance and character of existing stable neighborhoods. Motions presented by Tom LaBonge, by Councilman O'Farrell, and by Councilman O'Farrell just this last July show how this tension plays out on the 800 block of Hyperion Avenue. The maximum density practical or suitable for a site is not necessarily the same as the maximum density theoretically permitted for the site, such is the case here.
Thank you. Dave Rand.
Good afternoon, council members. Dave Rand with the firm Armbruster, Goldsmith & Delvac on behalf of the applicant Amoroso Development Company. Before you, council members, is a good project that will contribute much needed housing to the Silver Lake community. The project is perfectly and entirely consistent with the underlying zoning, which is a multifamily district. This project proposes only 8 single-family homes, half the allowable density allowed in that R3 zone. The project is 10 feet lower than the applicable 45-foot height limit, and it's been designed in collaboration with the community to avoid privacy and other impacts to the neighborhood. The APC looked at this very carefully over the course of 2 hearings and determined that the appellant provided no substantial evidence to deny the tract map that's the entitlement before you. The appellant has raised several objections to the mitigated negative declaration that was adopted in this case. The M&D appropriately concluded there would be no impacts as a result of this project that cannot be mitigated. We have proposed, and what's in front of you today are a set of CEQA findings that summarize the conclusions of the M&D, that incorporate the mitigation measures, and that address the appellant's arguments, specifically that there would be no air quality, aesthetics, biological resources, geological or soils related, land use related, noise, public service, recreation, utilities, water supply, or traffic impacts as a result of this project. In addition, those findings go through some expert analysis performed by Crane & Associates, a reputable traffic engineer, that basically applied the worst possible hypothetical traffic assumptions to the intersections surrounding the project and determined, based on even those unrealistic assumptions, that there could be no significant traffic impacts caused by this project. State housing law mandates that this project be approved unless the city makes an extraordinary finding that there is a public risk to health and safety. No such finding can be made, and no evidence has been submitted into the record indicating that such a finding can be made. At the end of the day, this is a modest project that will help the city achieve its housing goals for the Silver Lake community. It's been designed to be compatible with the community, consistent with the zoning, consistent with state law. We urge you that you uphold the Area Planning Commission's unanimous decision to deny the appeal, and deny the appeal again today while adopting the CEQA findings in front of you. Thank you for your time.
Annie Sperling, Kevin Fitzmaurice, or Fitzmaurice.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm a longtime resident of that area, about 20 years. The street in question has a blind curve and has been used notoriously as a thoroughfare for all the residents. I know of several people who have been in car crashes. A good friend of mine was hit on a bicycle, almost exactly where they're talking about building this building. Saying that there's no impact of traffic is a lie. There is tremendous amounts of traffic happening as more and more of these buildings come in the name of a housing crisis. But if you lived in Silver Lake and Echo Park, you would know it's not necessary to make that area more dense. Myself and other residents have been coming to these meetings for months and months trying to get some of these proposals looked at more seriously. The M&D is not sufficient. This is an unsafe street for such a huge building. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Fitzmaurice.
Fitzmaurice, I'll get a minute, so I'll talk to one point. The height. It's 34 feet. That's 3 stories in a neighborhood that's nothing but 1 or 2 story residences. I have proposed several possibilities to reduce that and still build everything they want. We can't get it 1 inch lower out of them. They have a 4-foot pitched roof on it, make it flat. There's 4 feet lower. Top floor is 9 feet, second's 10, bottom floor is 11 1/3 feet. I understand the height on the bottom floor. Make them all 9 feet. There's at least 2 feet lower right there. What is the problem with the 7-foot roof on a garage? 2 more feet right there. My roof, my ceiling, not roof, on the garage is only 7 feet. And what's the problem? Pull in the driveway, make a right turn down to the parking level, drop that 2 feet. There's 2 more feet. You could easily be 10 feet lower and build everything he wants. We can't get a single inch lower out of this. SEQA requires that impact on viewscape be mitigated. It is not here. And this, well, you're lucky I had another thing to say too.
Thank you. Christine Kantner.
Good afternoon. My name's Christine Kantner, 3924 West Sunset Boulevard. I'm the neighborhood council representative for this region. This proposed development was initially rejected by the neighborhood council. Nevertheless, adjacent land has now been purchased and the size of the project has doubled and again rejected. This invasive small lot subdivision must be scaled back. The mass is much too large for the site, the street, and the neighborhood. I hope everyone starts listening to the stakeholders in the neighborhoods. Thank you.
Herman.
Wow, such testimony. The mode, especially the will to cause and the result of the cause, in effect, I look at it as criminal behavior. Because you don't allow the people to have the transparency to understand what you're doing to our communities. You heard it earlier, safety concerns. You heard about the density. Where do you park additional cars when your children are living at your home with you? I mean, Mr. Weezer doesn't care, but we do. So keep to the guidelines. Follow those guidelines. Don't change them anywhere, any place, any time behind closed doors without the public's concern and testimony. So for the record, I think you should hold off on this until the actual people impacted in that one block can come in here and have their testimony so that at least you can develop around the problem you created of the situation of recidivism. Thanks.
Wayne?
Perfect example of a city out of control, does not represent its people. Here you got a neighborhood council, rejected it. They go back and double it, reject it. But because the city runs on 15 plantations with 15 slave owners. So today's slave owner is Mitch O'Farrell. He wants it. Nobody else wants it except the campaign donor and Mitch O'Farrell versus everybody that lives in the community. And it takes you 3 to make a decision. So I know the chair is going to vote yes because he ain't paying attention. The gopher over there in CD7, he's not even going to pay attention. So it's up to the new guy, Marchese. Listen to the people, vote no. Or at least vote to send it back for redetermination to lower the height restrictions. You got to have some new people here. This business as usual is killing the city. Vote no on this piece of crap.
Thank you. Are there any questions? City Attorney?
Terry Kaufman, Messia City Attorney's Office. Just a couple of points. Counsel for the applicant was referring to a state law known as the Housing Accountability Act, and the findings are required under that act to either disapprove a project or condition it so that the project is approved at a lower density are very stringent. Those findings are you have to make a specific adverse impact, that the project will cause a specific adverse impact upon the public health or safety unless the project is disapproved or approved upon condition that it be developed at lower density. And specific adverse impact means significant, quantifiable, direct, unavoidable impact based on objective, identified written public health or safety standards, policies, or conditions as they existed on the date the application was deemed complete. The other issue that came up with, involved the guidelines. The guidelines are not enforceable. I think our office has mentioned that in other meetings. You are limited to the findings under the Subdivision Map Act, which are in the staff report. I don't know if you want me to read them to you, but they're there if you need help with that. So you've also got the small lot ordinance, but that's what you're limited to, and you don't have the discretion that those guidelines would give you. So you can't really go there.
Fuentes?
Helpful to me is if you did read not the guidelines, but you alluded to the, what was the thing in the middle there?
The findings under the map.
On the findings. Because here's something that I'm confused about, or maybe frustrated about when it comes to small lot subdivisions, is that there will be a tract map sort of approval process, or I shouldn't say approval process. There's a tract map process, and then there's generally a general plan amendment process to follow suit with it. Here, and I wish that I had gotten this stuff sooner, but I'm glancing through it here. As presented, Section 4 in what the appellant gave us, he speaks to there not being substantial evidence to support the findings necessary to approve the vesting tentative tract map, and they cite government code sections and suggest, I think, that if any one of these items is not satisfied, that we can't support a tract map. And I think one of those seems to be making sure that the general plan overlaps properly with the tract map. Is that accurate?
So I don't have that document in front of me, but the findings of the MAP Act, you don't have a general plan amendment in front of you. This project doesn't need that. So when it talks about consistency with the applicable general and specific plans, it's talking about consistency within the confines of the MAP Act, which does not allow design conditions. It doesn't, and when it talks about design, it's talking about the layout of the actual.
Sure. No, I understand.
Subdivision.
And they're largely guidelines and recommendations. But in terms of this particular project being aligned, its proposed tract map with the underlying land use of the general plan in that area, is it conforming? Are we okay?
Well, that you have to, that's what the APC found, so you can talk to the planner about that.
Sure, but
maybe
the APC doesn't always get it right, so I'm just wondering, from the planner's perspective.
The issue of the appellant is that he would like to see design elements in the development on the project.
Right. I'm not speaking to design. I know that was brought up. I'm talking about the underlying land use designation with the proposed tract map. Are they in sync with one another?
Yes, they are. The smaller subdivision is allowed in multifamily dwellings. The zoning is R3, and the high district allows up to 45 feet. The applicant is proposing 8 units only. The density allowed by the density is 18 units, so it's way below the allowed density. We have to make a consistency finding on every subdivision, not only tract maps, parcel maps, and that's an element. Smaller subdivision has become a hot issue because of the design of the buildings, that they go 2 or 3 stories because they are small lots and they need some parking. They have parking requirements. But the element of consistency is there. In this case, the smaller subdivision is consistent with the zoning, the community plan, which is the land use element. That's basically included in the findings.
Very good. And so on design, I heard one of the folks testifying suggesting that the view shed could be protected if a certain design were approved. I understand that we only have guidelines, but is a developer unwilling to work with the community to try to get some of these mitigations in place? The other one that is of interest to me is this blind curve. Not knowing the site, it sounds like there's mitigations that are possible.
Shade and shadow analysis it has a threshold of 60 feet. That's when we require the applicant to do an analysis on shade and shadow. The height of the development is 34 feet, which is way below the 45 feet allowed. Now, there is a provision in the Subdivision Map Act, the section 66427, which specifically states that the design and location of buildings, is not part of the map review, so we cannot impose design features in a development. Now, unless the local legislative body, this means the city council, enacts an ordinance. So by having the smaller subdivision approved by council, we can determine the location of the buildings. But the design of the buildings can be only enforced if we have, for instance, an HPOC, a community design overlay, or a specific plan that includes design elements. That's why the design of the buildings is not enforceable through the guidelines that we have. The guidelines are just that, guidelines. And the applicant was required to go to the urban study and the planning department to have some recommendations on as far as massing, scale, setback, height. But that's as far as we can go.
So if we had hypothetically a ordinance in place that said that we have to do the analysis for the view shed for buildings that are 30 feet or more in height, would we then, if that were in place?
That would be enforceable.
That would
but
be
it has to be, but we have to have the ordinance.
Okay. All right. So,
and this is based on state law.
So, given what is currently available to this council, we can't enforce it. We'd have to rely on the goodwill of the developer to try to mitigate some of the issues that are being raised by the community. We have exercised every enforcement capability to the best of your knowledge under the current proposal.
Well, the other issue is that this is something another argument from the appellant. He wants to have some design guidelines that are included in the community plan for multifamily development. The smaller subdivision is a single-family project in a multifamily zone. So we cannot apply any type of design elements containing the community plan in a smaller subdivision.
Councilman, if I could address your question. So the only area I'm aware of that actually has view protections for single-family homes would be like the Mulholland corridor that has some different view guidelines, but in the city we don't protect private views. And this building under CEQA isn't large enough to have shade shadow impacts that may design changes in the building. What we tend to see with projects like this is where there's two existing single family zones that back in the 20s, 40s may have been developed when we didn't have the population projections we have now, where they're multifamily land use and they can be a large apartment building that's one massive bulk there. And we're seeing a small lot subdivision come in, which may feel denser to people, but a lot of times we compare that to the by right apartments that could be on the lot. It actually is a pretty good urban design treatment to do, and actually is more compatible with the neighborhood than what we've seen prior to the small lot ordinance that allows for a typology that feels and acts more like a single family home would in that area.
And that's where I think this is interesting. Mr. Bonin introduced some motions to talk about that, and I think you're right, where there's a trade-off to have more single family sort of feel versus, not to say that there's anything wrong with multifamily, but when on balance that seems to work. But it seems to me that there are situations, primarily in my district, where you have open land where there isn't anything like that. And, to me, 8 sounds like small lot subdivision worthy conversation. 248 doesn't. And so I just wonder out loud, for the benefit of the community here, if we can be smarter about our policies in terms of how it is that we can have some more enforcement on some of these things. Because it doesn't sound to me that there are, with the exception of wanting to go for an EIR, I mean, that's a circulation process and it's away from M&D. At the end of the day, you still get the project that you get. So how do you head off the concerns that folks have so that you don't have to do that? Because I think if we can be smarter and have more agreement on the project, then we have more harmony. And so the concerns that were raised by the community aren't, I think, absolutely outrageous if they are in fact possible. But if we don't have the ability to enforce, then we're subject to the goodwill of this developer, which is hard to understand if there's any there. It doesn't sound like there wasn't any community members that came to testify here, at least in support. I'm wondering at the APC if you had any community support for the project.
I don't recall, frankly, it was some time ago, if there was a member of the community who supported the project, but staff reviewed the application, and actually the applicant originally had proposed a subdivision on a single lot, but during the process they purchased another lot. There was a change of ownership and they expanded. But from the beginning it was consistent with the Subdivision Map Act and the ordinance, the smaller ordinance. So there was not much of an issue, but just to go through the administrative process and make all the findings.
Very good, thank you.
If I may, to want to add something. The applicant's attorney provided some additional or supplemental environmental findings. I reviewed the findings. They just add detail to the findings adopted by the East LA Area Planning Commission, and they are on record, so I recommend that you adopt the findings. The applicant feels that this may go to litigation and they want to have some elements to defend themselves. So.
Thank you. We were given 2 additional cards for public comment. Sylvie Shane and Stephen Luffman.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I wanted to say that I stand behind everything that has been said in opposition to this project regarding all the negative impacts to the community for all the previously mentioned logistical and aesthetic reasons. This project deviates far too greatly from the provisions of the general and specific community plan that apply to it, and therefore should not be granted until such time that a full environmental impact report be conducted and made available to the community. I personally, as a Los Angeles resident, am particularly concerned about a new pattern that seems to be emerging in this city in regards to development and the granting of entitlements and exceptions at the cost of the local community. It seems that the folks in this beautiful, all-striking building of City Hall, who are charged with the great task of protecting our city's charter and ordinances, and thereby its general and specific community plans, and overseeing the proper due process in their regard, have become far more comfortable relegating this protection to the court system. This is not proper process. Please give this reconsideration.
Thank you. Stephen Luffman.
Hello, my name is Stephen Luffman. I am a citizen of Los Angeles, and I can't nearly top what Sylvie just said, but I think all around the city I see these developments that are towering above their neighbors, and they're just like big bullies on the block. And there has to be some consideration for the aesthetic and also the neighbors that is just not being taken place in this instance. And I want to express my opposition to this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions or comments? No. Okay. We've had these similar discussions at previous meetings where on subdivisions, the issues raised by local communities with respects to disruptions that may be caused in the community do not rise to the level of violating any environmental rules such as CEQA or anything else, but at the same time, in our city processes, in a local process, we're confined to the Subdivision Map Act and what we can do and cannot do in that area. So it oftentimes leaves us in a difficult position in terms of seeing some of the impacts that may happen. And as Mr. Fuentes pointed out, sometimes we are left up to the developer to work with the local community to work these items out. At this point, I'd recommend that we approve the East LA Area Planning Commission's denial of the appeal and approve the project and move it to council. I would ask that that's what I'm recommending if the committee so wishes, but I would ask also that Council District 13 work with the community and the developers, see if there's any other mitigations that they could put in on this project. Is there any objection to that, or any questions or comments, or any? Is there anybody here from Council District 13? Well, I was asked to ask if there's anybody here from Council. There's not anybody here from Council District 13. Okay. Any objections to that direction? And when would this get to council? If
this is scheduled for September 9th.
September 9th? Okay. September 9th. Okay. So ordered.
The appeal is denied, and you will adopt the additional environmental findings.
And we'll adopt the additional environmental findings, yes. Thank you. Okay. Next item.
The next item, Councilman, is an appeal by Donna Gooley on behalf of neighbors and community of Valley Village. This is an appeal on a tentative tract map for 5 new condo units on one lot in CD2.
Thank you. Staff here to give a brief overview, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Wershing with the Subdivisions Unit of the Planning Department. This is an appeal of the denial of an appeal of an approval of a tract map by the South Valley Area Planning Commission. The project consists of 5 new condominium units in Valley Village. The project site is Zone QR3-1, which requires 1,200 square feet of land area per unit and permits up to 6 units, 1 more unit than the 5 units requested. The appeal grew out of the demolition by the applicant of the previous house on the project site that was apparently lived in by Norma Jean before she became famous as the actress Marilyn Monroe. Prior to this appeal, the plan approval for this project, pursuant to the Valley Village specific plan, was appealed to the Area Planning Commission, which denied the appeal on April 9th, 2015. The case was appealed because the appellant believed that the existing structure erected in the 1940s was historically significant. The Commission denied this appeal because the house is not designated as a historic resource or a historic cultural monument. The staff of the Office of Historic Resources were also not in favor of recommending a historic designation for the house. An attempt was made to have the house designated as historically significant by the Cultural Heritage Commission, but it was cut short by the house being demolished on June 15th, 2015, before the application for a historic designation could be heard by the Commission. However, the demolition was done in accordance with a demolition permit issued on April 24, 2015. The approval of this tract map, tentative tract 72725, was then appealed to the Area Planning Commission, which denied the appeal on July 9th, 2015, on the advice of the City Attorney as well as the Planning Department, because the first 2 appeal points involving the demolition of the house and construction noise are building safety code issues that are not grounds for the denial of a tract map. On the 3rd appeal point, the removal of an existing tree is permitted by the conditions of the tract map, provided that the tree is replaced on a 1-to-1 basis. The appeal before you has 50 different appeal points which fall into 6 categories, which we think are without merit. We are recommending that the decision of the South Valley Area Planning Commission in denying the appeal of this tract map be sustained, and that the appeal be denied. If you would like, I can discuss the individual categories of appeal points or alternatively respond to questions about the points. And that's my presentation.
So we'll hear first from the appellant. And I have 2 people who submitted appellant cards. One is Donna Gooley and the other is Jen. I believe Donna Gooley is the appellant of record. So you will have 5 minutes, and then I will call upon Jen, who has 1 minute. The appellant and the applicant have 5 minutes, and all other speakers have 1 minute. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I am here today to speak to you on behalf of Say Valley Village. We are extremely angry at the illegal demolition of the Dougherty House, 5258 Hermitage, especially in light of the fact that it was scheduled for a hearing by the Cultural Heritage Commission in 3 days. There is evidence that it was among one of the most important historical buildings in Valley Village. In addition to being illegally demolished, the applicant showed total disdain for the neighborhood during the demolition. We were exposed to lead, asbestos, and natural gas due to a gas line being broken during the demolition. Since we had no notice, some neighbors had windows open. We don't know if the demolition crew even made a sweep of the house before the demolition to see if there were live people, animals, whatever. The next morning, mature trees were removed in violation of at least 5 laws. When a company shows so little regard for the community, it should not be allowed to continue, and it should should be prosecuted for its actions. Additionally, the proposed project is not harmonious with the character or the culture of the neighborhood.
Thank you. Jen?
Good afternoon. I'm also listed as one of the appellants. The other appellants are at work and could not get off work today, but had a few things they asked me to say as well. And I was also asked by several local organizations to say their piece as well, if that's okay with the council.
Sure. What I'm going to do is allow the for you to finish the 3 minutes left on the appellant's time. So you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. The first issue we would like to address is the permits. I believe we got everything on record ahead of time, so I don't know if you can, everything is already submitted to the administrative record if you want to follow along to anything that I reference. There's 2 permit numbers on record. Both issue date was April 23rd, 2015. The last 5 numbers, the first one 00496 and to follow 00498. Page 3 of both of those documents issued on April 23rd, 2015, and the applicant signed under penalty of perjury. Right below it's saying, I agree to comply with all the city and county ordinances and state laws relating to building construction and hereby authorize representatives of the city to enter on the above mentioned purposes. I realize that this permit is an application for inspection and that it does not approve or authorize the work specified herein and does not authorize or permit any violation or failure to comply with any applicable laws. The applicant failed to notify AQMD, who finally showed up on the site on June 19th. The illegal demolition took place on June 15th between the hours of 7:30 and noon. AQMD did not show up to the site until the 17th, at which time the job site was completely spotless and they were not able to obtain any sufficient samples to locate anything sufficient. We haven't heard back from them. Section 1706 of the LA Municipal Code, entitled Tentative Tract Map and Appeals, states that an advisory agency may disapprove a tentative tract map because of non-compliance. The applicant failed to notify AQMD, which is required by law. It's also required by the city. Bear with me, there's a lot of papers here, I'm sorry. There is nothing in the case file that, as of today, in the case file that indicates any kind of sign-off sheet from AQMD. And I believe that the applicant has admitted to failure to notifying AQMD. And that being said, in addition, there was the issuance of the permits were, we believe, to be in compliance with Ordinance 188312, which imposes a 30-day notification on site to allow neighbors to not park their cars on the site. It's on a corner lot. Neighbors had their windows open, cars were covered in dust, debris, asbestos, and that entered into the homes of adjoining properties, into the rooms of children and on the window screens, and no care was taken to ensure compliance, and the community was not understanding why the city issued a permit.
Thank you. Now we'll hear from the applicant, Alicia Bartley.
Do I get to speak on behalf of the organizations? Or?
No, that was the allotted time.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Try to keep our rules consistent. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Alicia Bartley with the Law Offices of Gaines and Stacy. As you heard, what's before you today is a tract map, the approval of a tract map for a 5-unit condominium building. The building itself was previously approved with a project permit compliance as being consistent with the Valley Village specific plan. The appellants do not raise any grounds to deny the tract map. The map complies with the MAP Act, the general plan, the specific plan, all zoning regulations. As you heard, that there was a number of allegations that were raised by the appellant. I believe that it was 50. But none of the grounds raised by the appellants are grounds for denying the tract map. There are various allegations that the applicant failed to comply with various regulations relating to demolition, but there is no specific evidence submitted regarding those violations. The applicant has complied with all applicable regulations, and we request that this council uphold the determination of the South Valley Area Planning Commission. I can answer any questions that the council has regarding any of the appeal points raised, but unless this committee has any specific questions, I'll concede my time.
Thank you. George Abrahams.
Yeah, I want to remind you that you individually and also Mitch Englander introduced a motion in 2011 supporting the appellant's position regarding illegal demolitions. And it says, at times such illegal destruction is done as a preemptive measure on the part of a property owner who wishes to rid a property of historic features so as not to have to address them in a future intended project. Other times there is simply flagrant disregard and disrespect not only for the historic status of structures, historic features, but also the laws, policies, and processes which govern any and all construction and demolition in the city. And so it goes on to mention the scorched earth, which I'm asking you to impose on this project, and also ask for even more severe policies be studied. So you should deny the tract map and also the MND. This was a criminal act by the applicant.
Thank you. Wayne? Wayne, not here. Doug Mensman. I'm sorry, I saw one. No, yeah, and I did see an additional card here. So, Wayne?
Yes, this is in CD2, and you know where that is. Paul Krikorian, of course, the GOAT. So, again, same thing. Same plum, same deal. Public doesn't want it. There's a long list of appellants. They can't get here today because they're busy tied up on the freeway right now getting to their jobs so they can get back home and pay their taxes. While you guys get paid to do what? Build these ridiculous projects over the only refuge they have in life, their home. It's about their home. You don't even let people have a home anymore. They buy a goddamn home, and the next day there's a hotel-sized building next door to it. They did it to me in CD5. They're going to get $2 million for this friggin' hotel-sized house. The minute they close escrow, I'm going to sue the shit out of them, too. Vote no on this.
Got a card from Jen in Save Valley Village, but again, this is once the speaker speaks once, and we gave you the option to speak on that item. It doesn't. This is not valid. So, just letting you know. Doug Mensman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, council members, Mr. Director. Doug Mensman speaking on behalf of Councilman Paul Krikorian here. We came to respectfully ask you to affirm the decision of the advisory agency and the APC on this case. The appeal points or basis, as previously stated. Staff, the environmental review, Office of Historic Resources review determined that there isn't a historic resource on the site. There wasn't a historic resource on the site, so therefore Mr. Abraham's argument is rendered sort of moot in that respect. Nothing was done illegally. Permits were applied for and pulled. All city and state codes have been followed. So we ask that you hurry up and dispatch of this one.
Thank you. City Attorney.
Terry Kaufman, Mesilla City Attorney's Office. So I just want to point out a couple of things. Number one, an MND was adopted for the project permit compliance in April of this year, and the time to challenge that has run. That MND included a description of the tract map and the 5-unit complex. So what you would be looking at here, since you have an adopted MND, is whether there is any substantial change to the project due to involvement of new significant impacts or an increase in the severity of previously identified significant impacts, or substantial changes to circumstances that would require revisions, or new information of substantial information that was not known or could not have been known and shows new impacts. Those are the only ways you can deal with an MND that's already been adopted. You have the same situation that you had before, where you have the tentative tract map findings, and those are the findings that you have to deal with. Some of the issues that have been raised relate to the building permit and the demolition permit, which are not part of this project. And so I think you're still subject to Housing Accountability Act because you're dealing with the housing development project. So I read those findings into the record. So that's where you are before you make your decision.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments? My review of this, I couldn't see any of the appeal claims as valid grounds for appeal under the tract map, and given the testimony of the local council member, would request that we deny the appeal and approve the project to move it forward to full council. Does it go to full council? It does, right?
Yes, I believe it's tomorrow. Yes, it's in council tomorrow.
It's scheduled tomorrow.
It's in council tomorrow?
Yes.
Any objections? So ordered. Thank you.
Any cards, Councilman?
No, I saw the cards I have on item 7. That, I believe, we are finished with agenda items except for public comment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we can go on to public comment at this time. George Abrams.
I'm opposed to two motions introduced last week by Gil Cedillo, the micro units and the modifications to the site plan review threshold. Site plan review has important protections for the public, including notification and also specific findings. The project has to be in substantial conformance with the purpose, intent, and provisions of the general plan, applicable community plans, and any application-specific plan. That it will be compatible with existing and future development on adjacent properties and neighboring properties, and that any residential project provide recreational and service amenities to improve habitability for its residents and minimum impacts on neighborhood properties. So basically, we're reducing the protections afforded to the public by the site plan review process by raising the threshold, and this is wrong.
Thank you. Herman?
Flagrant disregard. I oppose to item 7 for the record and my testimony in behalf of Mr. George Abram at Valley Village. The appeal has to do with safety, hazards, density, and parking, and no double checking up with the Department of Building and Safety. Stop the bullshit. Do what's best in interest of the public, consistency of the public. Once again, flagrant disregard. Flagrant disregard. All these white-collar crimes you commit, eventually the FBI is going to investigate, and one of you or all of you are going to be behind bars for the disruption of our lives. It doesn't matter, right? But it will matter, because I can't wait to see the day when they drag your little squirreling little asses out the door for bribery and corruption and city business towards the public, you son of a bitches.
Wayne?
Yes, you did it again. You got everybody mad except the people that matter, the campaign donors, the developers, the insiders. They're all happy today. So what do you got? seven out of 7 for the campaign donors. And I've never seen you once deny a single project all the time I've been here. Any of you guys ever vote no? You don't do that. Gilbert Cedillo, he doesn't even show up because he knows that he doesn't have to be here. And Mitchell Englander doesn't have to show up because it's going to be a 3-0 vote no matter what they say. I mean, these people could have all come in wearing hoods and you still wouldn't have paid any attention. But the day's going to come when the people of this city are going to have to do something about this city government. I think the answer is to do a citywide ordinance for the people to vote to disincorporate the city and make it an unincorporated area of Los Angeles County.
So I believe that completes our agenda. Nothing else pending. So
yes, sir.
We will adjourn. Thank you.